Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Longbox. I'm very excited today. I've got a special guest that I've been fans with, geez, all my whole life. This is Bill Black. How you doing?
Hello, John. Glad to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you, man. I guess good thing we started talking 10 minutes early. I got all my fanboy gushing out of the way, and now I can talk like a civilized human being. But for those of you who don't know, Bill is the guy behind AC Comics, and I got a glare over here. But would it be safe to say your most famous comic is FemForce?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I'm an unabashed FemForce fan. AC's. Oh, there we go. AC Comics is one of those comics companies that I'm a fanboy of. And when I say fanboy, I mean I try to get all the comics. So as I've been getting FemForce off the shelves. And then I said, you know what? I want to get it from issue number 1. I went back. I started getting issue number 1. I'm up to issue 40. And as I see the ads for other comics, I buy them. So I'm reading AC Comics in chronological order from FemForce number 1. And already we got people in the chat. How you doing? Mark One Ho, good evening, and Cool Beans.
That's Mark Holmes. He's running the AC FemForce website on Facebook.
Hey, you got your people in. Good.
Yeah.
See you, Mark. It's great to see you.
He's also starred in a couple of my movies.
We got Edwin the Ace. Edwin and I just talked the other day. This is your comic, or am I getting mixed up? And we got Marcus over here. How you doing, Marcus? How you doing? Thanks for showing up.
Hello.
Right. So let's get down to business here. How are you doing, Bill?
I'm fine. I'm at a stage in my life that everything has worked out wonderfully. I'm happy with where I am and what I'm doing. I retired in 2014, and that was after over 30 years of hitting that 30-day deadline. Wham, wham, wham. So I was like a slave to it. Be careful what you wish for. It worked out great, and I'm really happy with everything that we did. You had mentioned a minute ago about you're trying to collect the AC titles. Do you know how many AC titles there are?
Oh, a lot. I don't know the exact
number.
number.
20 years ago, I think we logged 120 different titles.
Just, yeah.
So it's probably over 150 now.
Well, now that's a good. You could go to accomics.com.
Yeah.
Or as Marcus, www.accomics. And this is, you said you could get these pristine. People haven't even touched. You could buy them. And you said most of them were cover price?
Yes, sir. Mark Heike is now running AC Comics. He and his wife, Stephanie. When I retired, I turned the business over to Mark, and he was my associate editor since 1990. And he's a writer, artist, inker, everything, colorist. And I gave him the entire inventory out of my warehouse. So he has all the backstock of AC Comics in the original boxes that came directly from the printer, never opened. They're mint. They've never been read.
Wow.
And most of them he has at cover price.
And
the
I've been
ones that are pulled out are pretty rare. He has jacked up pretty high. But I would say 95% of them are going to be a cover price.
I've been buying them from back issue stores like a fool. There we go. I'll be at AC. I'll be at AC from now on.
What's funny is the oldest ones are the cheapest, and the ones that we've done in the last 10 years are the most pricey.
Oh, great! So I get to see a price increase as I get closer and closer.
Yeah, it's funny. I came out of retirement to work on FemForce with 188, which is a couple years ago, and I was just going to do it for like 3 issues because we were. Mark was expanding the market. He started a new title called Super Babes, which is another FemForce title. And we were going into a broader market. So I volunteered to come in and do 3 issues of FemForce and kind of do a retelling of the origin so new readers could understand who the characters are and what the basis of the whole concept was. Well, that 3-issue run is now turned into 16 issues, and I'm working on 204 now. So, but I've been writing it from the beginning, and with 188, I started writing again, and I worked with an artist named Eric Coyle, who did a lot of the earlier work too. I love working with him. He's so easy to work with. Then I would ink it, color it, and letter it, and send it into AC Comics. So that's what I've been doing as far as AC is concerned in the last couple of years.
So you're writing, inking, and coloring in your retirement.
Yeah. Oh, and also I'm still doing Paragon publications, and I'm making movies. Since I've retired, I've made, I don't know, 5 movies.
Yeah. And you got some of the posters. I love the posters, especially the one to my right, the vampire. That is just a gorgeous.
Yeah, that's Maria Paris. She's a fabulous actress. She came to work with me about 2007, and that's the second or third movie she did with me. It's called The Sangor Syndrome, and in that one she plays a very sexy vampire. And the other poster is Brenna Berry, and Maria brought her into the fold about the same time. And Brenna in real life is 5'11", so we cast her as the amazing colossal woman, and that's what that poster is for. And we've done 3 or 4 movies. In AC Comics, there's a giant woman called Garganta, and so Brenna is Garganta in the movies. And she's done also several other movies like Shadow Slayer. And like I say, I'm an old man, and they're like my adopted daughters, and they're beautiful people, and I love them to death. They're really great, very supportive of me.
Yeah, Marcus is bringing up that my comic has a Pat Broderick cover, and Pat Broderick has a long-standing working relationship with you.
Yes, he does. We've been friends since about 1973, I guess over 50 years. We're both living in Florida. He's in Tampa, and I'm near Orlando. And Pat helped me out back in the early Paragon days. He did some artwork for the Paragon books.
Yes, he did.
And some of the very first AC comic, Fun Comics #4, was a book I was doing at Paragon, and I brought it forward into AC Comics. And Pat did the cover of that. He penciled it and I inked it. And he did several other covers for the early AC books as well. Yeah, and we went full circle just last year, and I got him to do a cover for the AC book Cauldron of Horror. And you're familiar with Pat's work. You know how detailed it is.
Oh, I love Pat's work. Like we were talking before we went live. He's the first artist, as a kid, I just became obsessed with his work. You know, when he was doing Captain Marvel over at Marvel Comics with him and Drax the Destroyer flying around through space. I was hooked.
Well, he's an incredible artist, and he puts all his detail in it. And I tried to, when I art directed what I wanted for the cover, I tried to make it as easy as possible. Of course, he just ignores that. And it was a scene of a girl running through the swamp, and he puts a dock in the background with a boat and fish nets and alligators and everything in it. Now, I ink with a pen brush, okay? Pat inks with a micron marker, a 0 or 00, the tiniest little point you can find. Yes. So when he turned in the pencils for this, it was it was a real challenge for me to ink, but I think he was pleased with what we came up with. I certainly was. It was great.
I gave him, like, he asked me about my character. He asked me, like, what are his powers, everything that you need to do. And he says, any particular, idea? I said, yeah, do whatever you want. And then he started sending me the thumbnails, and I was like, I don't get this, and what do? I contradict Pat Broderick? He's a legend. So I trusted him. And then all of a sudden, boom, the cover was outstanding. Yeah. I'm going to bring up the covers just so you know what I'm talking about for my comic. But here we go. But I'm so pleased with it. And like you said, the detail that he used, I don't even, I'm not an artist. I can't draw to save my life. Okay, of course, now it's not loaded. Oh, there we go. Why is this not loading?
Because you're live, that's why.
I know, yeah. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. But Mark says that he was the Shadow Slayer, so he was the murderer in your movie.
Yes.
While this is loading up, I don't know if it's my computer's dying, so I don't know if it's my computer. But
Mark got to play a movie monster, so that was a thrill for him.
Yeah.
And then he was in the last movie I made, The Mummy Creeps, where he played the Egyptian priest, and he had a fun with that.
So when did you start making comics? What was your first year? And how did you start? What is your origin story?
Well, I started doing homemade comics when I was 11 or 12, when I was a kid. And then I continued that into high school, and I worked on the high school newspaper doing cartoons and that. And I was the art director on the art editor on the high school paper. And then in college, I was an art major at Florida State. And I met a fellow named Bill Killeen, who published a underground college humor magazine. Killeen was just misunderstood. He wasn't really a villain.
Yeah, Shadow Slayers are always misunderstood.
Killeen published a magazine called The Charlatan, and I started doing cartoons and ads for him and became the associate editor of that. Then my first published work came, I was in the Army, and I sent samples in to Creepy and Eerie at Warren Publications and got up with editor Bill Parenti. And he said,
got to show my comic book cred. Like,
there you go.
I got comic books all over the place.
So he said, when you get out of the Army, get up with me. And I did. And he started sending me a couple of scripts. And that was my first published work in 1969. And so that was my first comic book professional work. I did other artwork for other things prior to that. But also in 1969, I started Paragon Publications because I had learned about fandom, which I just learned about in 1969. They had little ads in the back of Marvel comics, the little tiny postage stamp ads, and I started buying fanzines through that. And then I got up with
like little classifieds and stuff.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I made friends with several of the editors of those things, and they helped me, and I helped them, and I did artwork for them, and they did articles and stuff for me. And so I did Paragon from 1969 into 82. And then in 82, I started AC Comics.
Oh, okay. Was there a reason you stopped with Paragon?
The reason I stopped Paragon?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's a very stupid story, but I'll tell it.
You don't have to tell anything that you don't want to.
I was working for a film production company in Orlando. Okay. And that was going very good. It paid very well. Then out of the blue, suddenly the head company up north decided to pull the plug on the Orlando film production company. So I had 1 week's notice that I didn't have a job.
Oh.
I think I got 1 or 2 weeks severance pay. And I thought, what am I going to do? Well, I was doing well with the Paragon stuff. The Paragon things were selling very good, but it wasn't quite enough to support my family. Okay. So I was bemoaning this to the local printer in Longwood where I live. And he said, why don't you, go full color and become a professional comic book publisher? Yeah, he's bragging on me. That's okay. Anyways, so his name was Chuck, and he got me up with a web press printer, those big giant presses that you see in the old movies about newspapers, the big giant roll of paper and all that. And also David Scroggy, who was the head of Pacific Comics, which was maybe the first independent company.
Yeah, I love Pacific Comics. Pacific Comics was the first non-Marvel, non-DC. I became obsessed with Pacific Comics. Just so like David, I'm saying,
he encouraged me to do it too.
Yeah, so what a great company.
We contracted with this color printer, and then we started the line. But why it was called Americomics? Chuck was married to a beautiful Japanese woman, and she said that the Japanese are just crazy about American comics. You can see where this is going. And they also were crazy about the rock group Cheap Trick, and we were going to get together with Cheap Trick and do a Cheap Trick comic book.
Oh,
and so
wow.
Chuck advised me that I should have the name of the company something that reflects America in it. So we came up with the name Americomics, which I really hated. And we had that for about a year. Then I changed it to AC Comics. But that's why we went from Paragon to AC Comics.
Okay.
Now, he sent his wife over to Japan to get the deal going with selling them on a Cheap Trick comic book. We'd gotten up with Cheap Trick and talked to them, and they're all gung-ho for it and everything. So, but she was over there for 2 weeks and came back with the sad story that, yeah, they love Cheap Trick. And hey, they have a lot of leftover merchandise from the Cheap Trick concerts over there. Would we like to buy it? And of course, what really happened was not that the Japanese loved the American comics and bought them, but manga came into existence and Americans bought all the Japanese comics. So we were exactly the reverse of what the reality was on that. But then I was stuck with Americomics and AC Comics.
Cheap Trick is one of the most underrated bands. They were such a good, fun band.
Well, I have them to blame for the fact that I now have tinnitus. I'll tell you that. We went to the concert and they put us up on stage behind the amplifiers with a couple of groupies, you know. Well, I try to forget that night anyways.
Yeah.
I have pictures from it though.
What was it? Double Live at Budokan? That was like a phenomenal. That record was like as big as Kiss Alive. That Cheap Trick were big. They were big. That would have been
yeah.
It didn't work out. So AC Comics, you bring a lot of public domain characters back. Has that was that?
Yeah, of course. I think the reason I'm doing comic books and always did comic books is I'm trying to recreate my past. When I was like 11 or 12 years old, I started drawing my own homegrown comics, and I did that because the comics that I liked got canceled. And the comic book that I bought that to this day remains my favorite comic book of all time was Simon and Kirby's Captain 3D. And that only lasted one issue. And so I started drawing my own version of Captain 3D comics.
Oh, wow.
And then when it's very crude, and then when Showcase number 4 came out with the first Silver Age Flash, it had a couple of panels in there that Carmine drew that represented a Golden Age Flash cover. And that got the old brain thinking back, oh, I remember the Flash and all that. And also, he also had the Golden Age Green Lantern and the Justice Society and all that. So I started, from memory, drawing Green Lantern. This is before they brought back the Golden Age Green Lantern. And so I've always had this love for comic books that I missed from my past, from my early boyhood. And then when I went to my first comic book convention in New York City in 1970, I learned, I thought I knew everything about comic books until I walked into that dealer's room.
Yeah.
So then I really fell in love with all the old stuff that happened before my time, the Fiction House stuff and the Quality Comics and all that. So I got up with T.T. Scott, Thurman Scott, who was the publisher of Fiction House. At the time, in the early 80s, he was living in Georgia. And through him, he gave me permission to reprint all the Fiction House stuff, with the exception of Sheena, which he had sold the rights to Paul Aratow on that to do the movies. But I got up with Paul, and we got a deal where I also did reprint some of the Sheena stuff as well. And then I got up with Vin Sullivan, who was the original publisher at DC, who was the one that introduced Superman. He was doing Magazine Enterprises, ME Comics, when I was a kid. And they published the Durango Kid and Tim Holt Red Mask, Ghost Rider, and that, which when I was a kid, those were my favorite comic books. So I got up with Vin, and he gave me permission to reprint all the ME stuff. And he had a title called Best of the West, which featured the Durango Kid, the Red Mask, Straight Arrow, and the Ghost Rider. So I started the AC version of Best of the West with Durango, Red Mask, and Ghost Rider. I had to call Ghost Rider 100 Horsemen because Marvel Comics usurped the title.
Yeah.
They didn't buy it or anything. They just stole it. And the original ME run ran 12 issues, and my run ran 71 issues. I've been proud of that. Of course, I did it just as a labor of love. I never made a nickel on a single one of those 71 issues, but I love doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to say, as a guy over here making my own comic, it's a labor of love. I haven't made a nickel.
Right.
Still
don't expect to.
Yeah. So I got it loaded up. I just wanted to show you the Pat Broderick.
Oh,
artwork.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, well, this is my comics called Heroic Tales by Longbox Comics. You know, and
that's a good name.
This is the regular cover. This is by Renzo Rodriguez. This is, you know, the regular artist, and then I have to do a variant cover. And I just look at this. Look at all that little. Is it called cross hatching? I don't know that.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Oh my God! It was such a dream to have one of my favorite comic book artists draw my character.
Sure.
Pat, like I said, he kept showing me thumbnails, and I was like, Pat, I don't like the way he's facing. He goes, trust me. And then once it was all done, I was like, why did I even doubt you? You are a master. You are a master. So I just wanted to show.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
I remember one thing I was dying to ask you is you had you called them the Sentinels, and it was the Charlton characters, Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, and the Question and Nightshade in one of your issues.
Yeah.
And I remember DC was doing it at the same time.
No.
You need permission.
No, they were not.
I'm sorry?
You're incorrect. That is wrong.
Oh, I'm incorrect. Okay, that happens a lot.
I'm glad to set the story straight because that doing that book has been the bane of my existence.
Oh, really? I'm sorry to bring up something.
No. Let me explain. At AC Comics, we had a title called Sentinels of Justice.
Right.
Okay. This was before I got up with Charlton. Okay. And right about the time, I was doing some covers for Charlton in 1980 and 1981. So I was friends with Bill Pearson, who was the associate editor at Charlton at that time. And he wrote to me one day or called me and said he was looking for material. He had published a title called Charlton Bullseye. Okay.
Yes.
I did a story for it, and Mark Heike did a whole book on it, I think. And a lot of people got their start through that Charlton Bullseye. And Charlton was canceling it, and he had a backlog of artwork that he promised the artists and writers that it would be published, and he couldn't do it because he canceled the book. And he was looking for a place to publish it. I said, well, coincidentally, I'm starting a company, and I could do that. And he said, oh, no, I want it to be a colored newsstand book. And I said, well, that's what I'm doing. I said, we're starting this new company, AC Comics. And so he sent me this backlog, or he sent me the addresses of all the artists and the phone numbers and all that, and I got up with him. Then they sent me the material. And two of the guys, Greg Guler and Dan St. John, did a book called The Sentinels of Justice, which was a team of the Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, Nightshade, and the Question. And I should have immediately changed the title from Sentinels of Justice to something else, but I didn't. I guess because it was maybe the fourth or fifth book I did. And when I was doing Paragon, I was doing like 3 books a year. Now I'm doing like 3 books a month. I just had to get all this material together to get it published. So that was a mistake. And so that, in true fashion, when you deal with artists who are beginners, they sometimes don't follow through with what their commitments are. And I can tell you a lot of horror stories about that.
Oh, I bet.
But that first issue, The Sentinels of Justice, was a continued story, and they never did a second issue. So that became a one-shot. That was AC Special, #1.
Right.
And then when I did my Sentinels later on with my character, Captain Paragon, and my character, the Scarlet Scorpion, and my character, Night Veil,
Right.
Everybody said, "Oh, he's just changing the Blue Beetle to the Scarlet Scorpion, and Captain Atom to Captain Paragon, and Nightshade to Night Vale." I hated that.
Yeah.
I originally created the Scarlet Scorpion back in 1959, and Night Vale, as the Phantom Lady, had been running for a decade in my Paragon books, and so on and so forth. So that's.
Yeah,
I'm
sounds
glad I have
frustrating.
a chance to explain that to a wider audience here. So.
Okay. I hope I didn't drudge up some bad feelings or anything.
Oh, no.
Like I said, I'm a big fan of a gushing fanboy of your comic. So we have to. I wanted to ask you. Femforce is your longest running comic. It is a cult hit. People love this comic, and it is no secret that it's sexy women. Is that, just, you said you wanted to publish what you wanted to publish. Is
Yeah, I don't care about what anybody else thinks. I just do what I want to do and what I love to do. And through some freak accident, it's lasted for over 50 years. So there's been enough people that like the same stuff I like to have supported it. I mean, we're not big by any means, but I believe we're the longest running independent company that ever existed.
Yeah. You know what?
Anyways,
it's no secret. People like to look at
the Paragon books. I had Tara, which was my Jungle Girl, and I had the Phantom Lady and Sin, the girl from LSD, and we even started Miss Victory in the Paragon days too. So I had all those characters. But in '78, I was Roy Thomas contacted me at Marvel Comics, and he had been buying my fanzines for years, and he said, "Don't you think it's about time you come to work for Marvel as an inker?" And I did for a brief period. And while I was working with Roy, we did a book called "What If the Avengers Were Created in the 1950s?"
Oh, I love that issue.
Yeah, that's Don Glut, who I illustrated one of his stories back in the Warren days. And I also inked one of his stories that he wrote for Marvel during that run. He put together a story that featured several heroines of the Marvel books: Venus, Namora, and Jana the Jungle.
Yeah,
so I said to Roy,
introduced me to those characters.
And I said, why don't you do a Marvel book that's just an all-female group, because that's never been done. Do a book that just features the Marvel heroines like Blonde Phantom and Miss America and Namora and all that. And he said, nah, female characters just don't sell. No, that wouldn't work. Okay. So then a couple years later, when I started AC Comics, I thought, well, let me give it a shot. So we had been going a couple years. It wasn't until '84 that I did a Femforce special. And that was actually material that I did for Paragon. That when I stopped doing Paragon, I had that just, in the file cabinet. So I got up with Mark Heike, who worked with me on those stories, and we did a new wraparound bridging sequence in that, and made the book-length story. And lo and behold, it was this guy keeps interrupting me. Blonde Phantom movie. Okay, cool. I'll sell my back issues.
Anyway, that's true, man. That's printed money.
Yeah. So that one shot, the Femforce special, sold very well. So in '85, then we made it a continuing series, and it's been published continuously since 1985. Yeah. And we're very proud that a year or so ago we hit number 200.
Yeah.
Very few independents go that long.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think like you said, AC Comics is the longest still in business independent company that I could think of.
Yeah. All the others that started about the same time I did have been long out of business.
Yeah, like you mentioned,
Pacific and all those. Yeah.
All of those wonderful comic companies. They some of them didn't even make it to the '90s.
No, that's right. Yeah. Well, they just weren't as stupid as me and Mark Heike, you know.
Stubborn, stupid, talented. You know, I've known Bill for years. I've never got to sit down with him on these stories. Oh, great. Thank you, Joel. You know, people, I knew people were going to come out there to see you, Bill. You know, you're a legend in the business. Our first FemForce was number 7, the Western Jam.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've been buying them, you know, for maybe past 5-6 years. And I was like, you know what? I'm getting them from issue number 1. So I just stopped, and now I think I'm up to 40. I buy 5 at a time, read them, buy 5. But now I'll be going to AC Comics because
do that.
Why pay the gouging prices? I'll put the money right in the people's hands.
Well, FemForce first started in a Paragon book called Femzine, Femzine. It was in Femzine number 1 in 1981. We did a 7-page story in that I wrote, and Willie Blyberg drew it. Of course, all the characters had existed that I drew before that, and then when we did the series for AC, Mark Heike was working with me. He was penciling, I was inking, and I was inking. He was penciling, and I was penciling. Yeah, he make my work look good, you know, with his inks. So Mark and I did the FemForce number 1, where I did the layouts and he did the pencils, and then I inked it and lettered it and colored it. And my wife did a lot of the coloring too in some of the early books.
Yeah, you pretty much did every possible thing related to comic books. You wrote, you drew, you published, you edited, and you direct movies. Jeez.
That's why it lasted so long, because all the other big companies, they have staffs, they have secretaries, they have underlings, they have janitors, you know, and all that. And it was just Mark and I, you know, and we didn't want to quit and become accountants or anything like that, you know. So we just wanted to keep doing what we love to do. We learned to become very frugal, and, you know, and live on a meager existence, but it worked. And after I retired, I started making money, so I'm real happy now. I'm in a very good place now.
Yeah, you said you retired in 2014.
Yeah,
but are you really retired? When we talked.
Are you saying retired or retarded? I'm both.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I will never stop drawing, you know, and I'll give you my new philosophy now that, you know, when you're in the comic book business, the goal is to get good sales, correct? And to sell as many issues as you possibly can. My philosophy now is the exact opposite of that. I will still draw and ink and write comics till I die, okay? And I don't care. Hey, Cliff, I don't care if anybody ever sees them or not, I'll do them, okay? So I in my retirement, I started up Paragon Publications again. And the goal on that was some of the Paragon titles that we did back in the 70s had gone out of print. And I thought, hey, you know, I could reprint these and do them in color now, because in the 60s, color printing was exorbitant. You couldn't do that. But now, you know, you can do color printing on your computer. You know, it doesn't cost anything. Hey, Chris, there's my gorilla man. Anyway, so what the heck was I talking about?
about the price of coloring has come down.
Oh, yeah. So I'm doing the Paragon books, and I'm printing, like I started printing on my own home printer, okay, just a couple copies, and then I found a printer they did a minimum press run of 25, so I started printing 25 copies, and I print between 25, 35, or 50 copies of the Paragon books, and that's it. They will never be distributed. They will never go through a comic shop. They will be for private sale only. I don't want to get into that rat race ever again. And I'm just happy doing that.
Wow.
And, yeah. And the last one that I did, I reprinted FemForce number 200 because I was not exactly pleased with the book that came out through AC. it was beautifully done, and it was a two-parter. What was 199 to 200 was a continuous story, but I only had 40 pages to work with, and I thought I had more story to do. I wanted to do this all-encompassing story, which had all the villains together and everything in the 200th issue, put as many of the FemForce characters from the past and the present all together in this big story. And I couldn't quite cram it in 40 pages. And also, for a reason I still do not understand, there was no editorial comment made in number 200 whatsoever. I mean, come on. It's a 200th issue. Come on, let's blow some bugles here. I mean, come on. So I got up with Mark and Stephanie and got their permission to do a Paragon version of that, which reprints 199 and 200, and I have additional pages I added to that to flesh out the story. And then I have pictures of FemForce #1 and the FemForce special and the FemZine and all that. It goes into a little bit of the history, like I just related to you. And it ended up being a 56-page book.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was pleased with that. And
wow.
I'm selling that as a signed copy. I'm able to sign copies of that.
Oh, okay. Is that from the AC website?
No. AC Comics doesn't want to have anything to do with it. I'll show you a copy.
Sure. I would love to see it.
It comes with a protective sleeve on the outside.
Oh, cool.
This is the book, it's a different cover than the AC version, different logo and all that. And it doesn't have all the blurbs and crap on the cover that a regular comic book has, okay?
We got a bunch of people watching this, 75 people watching. If any of these people wanted to get that, how would they
I have a store on eBay, and it would be FemForce 200 Special Edition.
Okay.
It's $25 a copy. It's 56 pages, and only 100 of them were printed.
Wow.
And Marky says it's stunning. You know, he knows.
Guys,
he's not prejudiced.
I can't go to eBay until I'm done talking to Bill. So if you buy them all while I'm talking to him, shame on you.
Well, I guess we could always go to a second printing, but okay. FemForce, since they've gone back to color, is not able to maintain a backstock of those recent books. That's why they're really hard to get.
Right.
So 200 was the bestseller they had since they started up again with 188. Okay. So we're real happy with the sales on that, but they don't really have any. Maybe, you know, I'll be honest with you. I get my contributor copies through Cliff's Books and DeLand. I buy them just like any other collector. That's the way I save my copies, and Mark Heike does the same. So there's like maybe 10 copies available that you can get through AC Comics. So I wanted to do this 200. So when that sells out, it probably already has, that I'd have some copies that I can give out to everybody else.
And I just bought one while you were talking. Just
get out of here.
I got one. I'm crazy that way.
Hey, I'm glad you're crazy that way. That's beautiful. Thank you.
These live chats always cost me between $10 to $50 everything. Because I'm a comic book guy. I love comic books. You know, Bill and I were talking before we went live. I enjoy comic books. I don't care about this guy hates this guy hates that. I want to talk about capes and laser beams and spaceships and cool art and beautiful, sexy women. So when you telling me you have a 25 print run comic book on I'm like, I'm getting this before, because I'm either paying $25 on eBay right now or $300 later on from some speculator. So
well, that's not the purpose of me doing the low print run. I just don't want to. Well, back in the Paragon days, there was no internet. There were no comic book stores. When I bought a Golden Age comic book, I would buy somebody's catalog, and it would just have a listing, All American Comics number 75. No picture, no nothing. You were buying a pig in a poke. You didn't know what you were getting. Yeah. And that by that trial and error, that's how I learned what books I wanted to buy. But doing Paragon, I had to mail out every one I sold, right? And it got, kind of crazy when we were selling a few thousand copies of it. So I don't ever want to get into that again. That's why I'm limiting the press run. I suppose I could do a second printing, but if I do, I'll put it in there that it's a second printing, so it'll differentiate it from the original run.
But like what you said back in the old days, if a comic book sold out on the spinner rack, you were out of luck. You know what I mean? Like so it made it exciting. I remember my friend, back, I'm talking like in third, fourth grade, back when those John Byrne X-Men came out that are just classic comics. We would be like, we were like little kids in a war. You go to here, you go to that store. We'll meet over here at 3:30. We had to hit the different 7-Elevens, and you went over to there was this mean guy Sven that if we were in his store for more than 2 minutes, he would yell at us. So I don't want to go. You got to go. You went last time. We would go in and and it was exciting and it was fun. I really enjoyed it. And then when a comic book store opened up in my neighborhood, oh my God, our heads were exploding. And I remember we went in the day it opened, and on the glass counter, inside the glass counter, they had Amazing Fantasy 15, X-Men #1.
Oh, wow.
And they were $60 a piece.
Woo!
And I remember looking at them and I said, who would ever spend $60 for a comic book? Oh man, if I had a time machine,
Yeah, wouldn't we all?
Somebody, I saw a comment that said,
look at this. You see that?
300 issues. Well, the current issue is
the current issue is 203. I'm still inking 204 now. Jeff Austin and I are inking 204.
And then you have a whole bunch of ancillary FemForce comics that probably close to 100 other issues.
Oh yeah, a lot of the books that AC did were one shots, and everybody says, "Why did you stop Captain Paragon after 4 issues?" Well, gosh, that's not a hard question. If it sold well, it'd be at number 200 now. But
so yeah, market forces. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned before we went live that you haven't bought new comics since 1987.
Right.
Was that like a conscious decision? Did you get, was there like, I don't like comics anymore, or just too busy?
Well, I had no other life other than AC Comics. And during that 34-year run or whatever, we had very few, if any, vacations, But when we started and the independent comics started, I vowed to buy every comic book I could get, every independent comic and everything. And after a year or two, I realized I had a big stack of comic books that I hadn't even read.
Oh, really? I'm at 18 long boxes of comics that I haven't read yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we won't get into that, but that's my story too. But this is the specific incident as to why I stopped buying comics. So I don't mean to belittle this particular title, but I was buying American Flag because Howard Chaykin's artwork was so brilliant.
Yeah, that was a good run.
The lettering on that was great, but I'd never read one. But I think it was number 14. I bought 14 issues, and I sat down and started reading it, and I really didn't like the book. I didn't like it at all. So I stopped buying it, and then I decided that I really wasn't. I'm very retro minded. I like the comics that were done like when I was a kid. Okay, and the 60s were my favorite period for comics. The Jack Kirby Fantastic Four and Thor and all that stuff. Wow, I was in heaven with all that. And
yeah,
Spider-Man, that was great.
I can't argue a word.
In the 70s, what went wrong with the comics was that the fans that were the fans in the 60s became the pros in the 70s. And the original artists were not getting the work anymore, and they were dying off. And it was just a different thing than it was that I liked. And I think when they killed Supergirl, and then they killed Superman, and when they killed the Flash, that did it for me.
Oh yeah.
I just gave up on it. I said, they're just doing this to make a buck, and the hell with it, so.
It's funny that you said that, because the Crisis on Infinite Earths, where all 3 of those characters were killed. I remember looking at the old timers who were coming in the store. They were so mad, you know, and I'm just like, look at this old time. Now I'm looking at 2015. I was looking at what Marvel and DC were doing to my beloved characters, changing the content. And I issued an apology to the heavens to all of these old timers. I get it now, guys. I absolutely get what you're talking about. You know, and it seems like they're doing that to all my fandoms. You know, first they Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who. They just.
Well, I think another reason why FemForce has the longevity that it has is that we've never changed it. It's been the same from issue 1 to issue 203. You know.
I like what you said. Yeah, my comic that I just showed is a love letter to Bronze Age comics from the 70s and 80s. You know, that's exactly. You know, we spend our whole childhood wishing we were an adult. And we become an adult, and we were like, oh man, I'd like to be a child again. You know, I, every time I hear that song by Stevie Wonder, you know, what is the name of the song now? You know, I wish. I get teary-eyed, you know, and he's some of those American flag pages. Yeah, I don't want to say anything bad about comics because I love comics, but I always use the American flag, Howard Chaykin examples of how the art is great, but the storytelling is so poor. If you don't have the word balloons, you can't tell what's going on in an American flag comic.
Well, that's one of the criticisms I have of today's comics is that there's one thing is really lacking that they used to have in the old comics, and that's words. You'll have a double page spread, okay, and one balloon with one word in it, you know. You can read a comic book in 3 minutes and then read it twice in 3 minutes.
I used to joke that I could dry my hair reading a modern comic, you know.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I agree. It's and all kidding aside, when you picked up a Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Fantastic Four, I was a kid and I was riveted for 45 minutes at least. You know, I could read a stack of modern Marvels in minutes. Like here's my stack of like this. I'm picking up back issues that I'm missing. I've been putting this off because I'm like, oh, okay, I'm done with all my live chats, and I got to go to bed in 45 minutes. I don't have time to read this.
Yeah.
You know, so I skip it, and then I get something more modern that I know is going to take 10, 15 minutes. But, you know, a 70s Marvel comic is like a meal.
Well, if you have the time, I have thousands of Marvels from the 70s in mint never read condition. I have all those werewolves if you're interested.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I buy collections from people. Absolutely.
Look on my eBay store. I have some beautiful Neil Adams Batmans on there now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, everybody get there. 82 people get there first before I find out the missing issues that I'm. Yeah. Who needs thoughts anyway? Yeah, that Mark said the thought balloon has all but disappeared. You know what's funny is I think I'm going to put the thought balloon back in issue 2 of Heroic Tales.
I wish you would, because I use thought balloons and caption boxes in all my comics.
Caption boxes, issue number 1 of caption. I brought the caption boxes back. You know. I think the thought balloon is important. Oh, what am I talking about? It's issue 2 of Heroic Tales definitely has thought balloons. Okay, you know, a comic is really good when you read it more than once. Yeah, that was another fun thing.
Yeah,
I could still recite like Avengers 165. I could almost write that script, you know, and just describe each panel, you know, of that because I read it over and over and over again. And then there's. You know, there's like I quit reading Marvel DC in 2015. The last 5 years of Avengers, I couldn't really tell you what happened. Yeah. You know, because it's just not important to me anymore. But those Jim Shooter, John Byrne, Len Wein, you know, Marv Wolfman comics from the 80s, I could quote them to you. You know, old Legion of Superheroes, I could quote them to you.
Yeah, and Chris Claremont on the X-Men.
Yeah. Talk about words. Yeah. There's a comic that took a while.
Well, I'm big on the omnibuses now. I have quite a collection of those. So the books that I missed in the 90s, like John Byrne's run on Fantastic Four, I now have his 2 omnibuses, and I have his She-Hulk. I'm reading the She-Hulk now and loving every second of it.
Yeah, those are fun. They were fun. They took their comics seriously, but they also had some humor in them. And then the artwork, John Byrne.
The characters were very well developed, like the Fantastic Four. I mean, you just love it when the thing blew a stack and Johnny Storm hit him in the butt with a fireball.
Yeah.
I mean, you were disappointed if that didn't happen. That was so much fun.
Fantastic Four are by far my favorite comic book. It's my favorite.
I'll tell you another story, true life story here.
Sure.
We're all comic book geeks, and
right.
We all get married and we wonder what our wives will think of us being a comic book geek. When I got married, I sat Rebecca down with a stack of Fantastic Fours. Every Fantastic Four I had, I started with number 9 through, this was mid-1968, all those. And she read every one of those books, sat down and read them. And you know what she said when she was through? She said, "Where's the next one?" So I said,
"Yep, we'll get married." It's funny because I got married when I was 38. My wife was 35. And so we got married. She knew I was into comics. She knew what she was buying. You know what I mean? She knew what she was. And my family started teasing her. "Oh, you're gonna make him quit reading comic books? You're gonna make him grow up? Blah 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 blah." And and she goes, "He's happy. He's happy. He loves his comic books." And then she said to my sister-in-law, she goes, "Maybe he should go to a bar every night and go drinking like your husband." He goes, and when he drops dead, I could sell his comics.
Yeah, I mean, when I was young, I was considered weird because I was in the comic books past my teen years. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, who's laughing now? We can retire on our comic book collection.
Yep. I love the Marvel 70s. They had Balls of Steel. Yeah. They had this rare thing called talent and respect, and they loved the medium, and they were lifers. Like Bill, you're a lifer. You've been making comics your whole life. You've been into, you know what I mean? The modern people, they're just tourists. They want to make a year or two of comics, but they really, really want to work for Hollywood, and they're using Marvel as a stepping stone for a career. Roy Thomas, he was in it for life.
And you had consistency too, like in the 60s. Every issue of the Green Lantern was drawn by Gil Kane. Every Flash was Infantino,
Right.
And that solidified it. And if you like those artists, you were like glued to those books.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't see runs anymore.
No.
I think the mainstream, they purposely don't have runs. I don't think they want their writers and artists to become superstars. I don't know. They're doing everything wrong. But again, that's fine. I've been out. I've been out since 2015. I'm making my own comics. I'm real happy with the independent comic scene. Are you aware or interested in like all these crowdfunded comics that are coming out now?
I guess I'll get yours.
Oh, thank you.
I've never gone in for that myself, but I'm sure it would be successful if I did. But I never had a lot of money, but I always had enough money to put my own comic books out. So I'm going to do that. And like I said, now I don't want to do a lot. I'm happy to do 25 to 50 copies of it, and that's it. So I don't need to crowdfund that. I mean, like you just raised what, $2,500?
I'm up to let's see. I try not to look every day because that'll just drive you crazy. I'm up to $4,500 for my
$4,000.
Yeah.
See, well, I wouldn't know what to do with $4,000. Why do you need $4,000 to make a comic book? You don't, So take a good vacation, my friend.
It costs more than $4,000. I need to get to around $6,000 to break even. And
who's your printer?
What's that?
Who's your printer?
Comics Wellspring. I'm looking at another. I'm looking at Comics Wellspring, and now I can't even think of the other one.
That's who I use.
Comics Wellspring. Good. Yeah, they make some. The comics are really, really good. Are you friendly with Randy Zimmerman of he does our Silverline Comics? Because his comics.
I'm not friendly with anybody.
You seem friendly. You seem friendly guy. Yeah, Bill, make a movie for $4,000.
Yeah, right, exactly. See, I could make 5 movies for $4,000.
So let's talk about that. When did you start making movies?
When I was a teenager, well, before I started going to movies when I was 6 years old. And I guess around 1951, I saw The Thing from Another World, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
So I went to every monster movie that came out, okay, and every cowboy movie until they stopped making them. So I started in high school in 1959 making my own monster movies while Roger Corman and the other people were actually still making them in the theaters, okay? So I liked the idea of the storytelling and bringing stories to life with real actors, and the idea of what I'm doing now is, of course, bringing the comic book characters to life. And I like that I can be the cinematographer, the director, the producer, the lighting man, the sound man, everything. You couldn't do that in a real movie because it's all union, and you get fined if you move a light a half a foot. You know, you can't do that. I think Fred Olen Ray, he compensates for that by joining several different unions, so he's allowed to do different things, which is very smart. But again, I make the movies because I love making them, and the budget on the movies, let's see, it shouldn't go over $2,000. You shouldn't have to spend more than a weekend shooting it. I've done many feature films with John Gottschall helping me on that, where we've shot a feature film, 85-minute movie in a 3-day weekend. Yes. And taking longer than that to me is ridiculous. But then today it's more difficult to make a movie with a young actress in it, because Mark Dale, when he was trying to do his Tara movie, he had a lot of trouble because in his casting calls, he was called politically incorrect because he needed a black actress to play Madame Boa, because Madame Boa is a black character in the comic book. Oh, no, you can't specify that she has to be black, you know.
Yeah, so you're going to waste other people's time and not hire them? You know what I mean?
I mean, and he had an enormous problem casting the movie. And then all these young girls, they may be pretty, but they're covered with tattoos and had metal in their nose and ears and all that. And it's yeah, I'm glad I'm retired.
I got in trouble for saying I don't like tattoos on women. And oh man, did people come out with the long knives for me. When I was a kid, this camera from the 40s, my dad gave it to me, and me and my buddies made Super 8 films that we actually cut physically and taped them together. Yeah. And matter of fact, I didn't even think about it until you brought it up. But there's a movie in here that's undeveloped. I don't even know if I could still get Super 8 film developed. It's probably no good. But I could do stop motion on this camera. I could adjust it, and I would make claymation films with me and my friends. Yeah. You know, that would be fun to find all my old stupid movies of me and my 12-year-old friends pretending to have super strength and the effects that we figured out as 12-year-olds.
Well, all those movies I made in the 60s were on 8mm and Super 8, and I did a couple in 16, but most of them were 8mm. And I'll tell you this right now, what I did today, my wife doesn't even know about this, but it came up on the internet and I had to grab it. There's a machine out now that will copy your 8mm movies frame by frame in 1080p.
Oh, yes. Wow. How much does that cost? I got to get that just because I got
$400.
See, I got
$400. That's nothing. It used to cost me more than that to have a film transferred.
Right, because I have a box full of Super 8 films, old movies. You know, me as a kid, Christmas. You know, my father ice skating, and my family wants them, and it was like $600 to get them all transferred. But if I could get a machine,
for $400,
it is amazing. I got a 3D printer for $180, and I printed out like the ultimate nullifier. You know what I mean? stupid nonsense for an adult to play with. You know. Oh, I'm enjoying this, but it's an hour now. I find it's best to end on an hour. So
I agree.
I would love to have you back. There's still so much that we could talk about. So, you know, I'll message you in a couple of weeks, see if you're interested in coming back, and we'll talk more. But anything you want to say before we get going?
Please help support AC Comics. They're still the longest running independent. Let's keep them running longer.
Yeah.
If you can go to their website and buy the packages, that's a big help.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the only way you can buy AC Comics is you have to order them in advance through your comic shop, like it's posted here. You can't go and find them on the stands. You have to order them through the comic shop.
Yeah. I do that. I have Femforce still on my my pull list. Yeah, it's, like I said, I stop by Marvel DC, but I still get Femforce every month.
Okay.
Or whenever they show up. I don't want to say every month. Let's see. Did I forget any comments? I don't want people to get upset. Good showing, Bill. Thank you, everybody, for showing. At 8:30 over here, I have comic book team up with RJ from the Fourth Age, and our guest is going to be Ron Mosicki. So, you know, just give me a half hour to woof down my dinner that my wife just dropped off, and then I'll be live again. And Bill, thank you so much, man. I'm a fan. As far as I'm concerned, you're a living legend in comics. You're a lifer. You're a guy that you said loves comics. You remembered your first comic. I always ask people, what's your first comic? Because everybody remembers their first girlfriend. They remember their first car. They remember their first comic. You know, I love it. I could gush and talk with you for another hour.
Well, thank you, John. I enjoyed meeting you, and I had a lot of fun doing this.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay. Anytime you want to come back, please.
We'll do it again. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Bye.